Hello, everybody. It's really nice to be here. Thank you all for coming in and tuning in to us. I'm Adam, President of StoreMaven. StoreMaven's the leading testing and optimization platform for App Store creatives. And I am very happy to have our beloved partner, Vanessa, here with us. Let you introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm Vanessa Rouhani. I head publishing at Jam City, and one of the areas that falls under the publishing team is App Store optimization. So we've been working with StoreMaven for several years now on doing our creative optimizations and really digging in deeper into organics.
All right. Cool. So myself and then the StoreMaven team, similar to a lot of you folks here, for the last 8 years, we've been studying the app stores obsessively. About 8 years ago, it was mostly about trying to figure out what metadata changes can do to help us rank or rank higher for different search queries. When we launched StoreMaven in 2014, it was more, we started realizing the impact that creative changes can make in the store, how optimizing the way we present ourselves can optimize our paid spend and organics as well. And in time, ASO has actually evolved into much more than just optimization. Today's talk, we want to tell you more about some of the learnings we've had as we're trying to more deeply understand and get a holistic picture of the App Store and how it ties into a bunch of other things that we do as marketing, as mobile marketers. I'll just share a quick example. As you can see here, Hogwarts Mystery by Jam City is getting featured by the store. And I would say probably the first thing that we'd look at is, okay, we should measure how featuring impacts our browse performance, one of the main channels of discovery in the store itself. But we can also start to question, by being featured, can we spend more efficiently because we're gaining awareness? By being featured, are we making an impact on our competitors somehow, defending our brand or quote unquote attacking theirs? Can being featured help us rank higher within search, whether it's increasing rankings or just boosting installs there? So by tying all of these things together and by looking at the App Store, we can actually measure for the first time the real value of a lot of things that we're doing in a more holistic way. So again, hopefully we'll share some cool learnings. And Vanessa, I'll start by asking you how you look at ASO.
Yeah, so I think, ASO, as you mentioned, it's so much more than just kind of keyword optimizations and creative testing. It's really understanding that holistic view of everything that is happening in the stores, and not only in the stores, but also outside of the stores and the relationship that has. I think for us, when we look at App Store optimization, we are looking at a variety of different metrics and data points. We're looking at a variety of different events to really ultimately see what the impact is in the store. And I think there's several kind of business questions that ultimately we're trying to answer here. One is we want to know, when we have kind of offline marketing events, kind of what the impact there is on that. Obviously, Adam mentioned store featuring, really trying to understand and dig deeper into the impact of various placements in the store. But we're also trying to see how things that are out of our control, like algorithm changes, can play a part in our optimization as well. I think when you look at ASO, it's kind of like an onion, and the more kind of layers that you peel back, the more you kind of start to understand all of the different variables that go into it.
Onions can make you cry too.
Yes, they can.
So, I mean, a lot of there's been recent banter around like how algorithms change really, really often, and it almost there's I think we recently read a post saying it almost renders ASO useless because you can't really determine or foresee what changes are going to come. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think what it comes down to is actively monitoring. I think that's really, really critical. So ASO is not a one-time thing. It's not you test this and then kind of leave it and forget it. You really have to be actively monitoring what's happening because, again, outside of algorithm changes, there's new competitors that will pop up. There's a lot of different activities that are happening. And if you don't kind of have your finger on the pulse of that, it's very easy to kind of overlook what's happening.
So how do you monitor?
I think for us, we look at a variety of different tools. So we're using, obviously, StoreMaven to do our creative testing. We look at kind of our keyword scores using AppTweak and App Annie. There's a lot of different sources that you can utilize for that. But we're also, really trying to dig in, again, deeper into organics and understanding the different events that kind of trigger that.
What kind of data sources would be helpful for companies here to be looking at that you feel are
important?
Yeah.
Well, I think the one kind of area that we look at first and foremost is really the developer consoles, because at the end of the day, what's happening in the app stores is all based on that data, right? They're using their own data to understand, and the top charts and the keyword kind of lists are all based on that data. And so we really want to pay attention to app units, conversions, impressions. All of those play a really big part in ASO.
I think in my conversations, a lot of times with developers, we often ask, like, how do you monitor organics? And I think for most companies, what's probably the most common thing is just looking at attribution. So they'll look at Adjust or AppsFlyer and sort of determine from there what is their organic yield. And I think this is a really important point for us to consider, because it's not necessarily wrong. Like, the UA perspective on organics is really important because it helps you understand what installs can actually be attributed to your paid efforts. But when ASO folks here try and optimize for growth and for platform-driven installs, we have to put ourselves in the platform's shoes. So how does Apple or Google determine whether to push more installs to our app versus, say, one of the competitors?
Yeah, exactly. I think, and that's why it's so important to be looking at that data from the consoles.
Yeah, I think what's also actionable, like a lot of times I get this question, so what's actionable here? And to me, it feels like we're going to continue doing very similar experiments, right? We're going to try and test new channels. We're going to try and do things that are offline. There's a lot of these opportunities. It's not going to change that, but I think it really should change the way we measure the success of those types of experiments. I think that's why this is a really big shift, actually, in the understanding, and also, thanks to the fact that the platforms are finally starting to expose us with, those data points.
Yeah, I think that's something that's been really interesting. On the Google side, they've been a lot more transparent. They added last year kind of tags to really allow you to kind of self-select which collections you're going to appear in the store. They obviously have kind of conversion benchmarks, which I think are good for us directionally to at least see kind of how we're performing. I think, hopefully that trend will continue, and we'll still continue to see more and more of that kind of exposed so that we can really, really leverage that data in a meaningful way.
So a lot of ASO teams here, I think, get measured often on conversions. Like, what are your thoughts on that metric?
Conversions can be manipulated very easily, and can be influenced very easily. So I'm sure anybody that's been featured has seen that when you get featured, obviously you see a rise in impressions and your conversion's going to drop. So I think just purely looking at conversions is not telling you the full story. You really need to look at installs and app units and impressions to be able to holistically see kind of what exactly is happening.
Yeah, and for those that aren't familiar, app units is basically a net new install per unique Apple or per unique Google ID. So it's basically a totally different way of looking at an install versus what you might find in other platforms. It's really unique to just those developer consoles. You said a few words. We said a few words about like competitors, and I think it would be interesting. I think a lot of the times we miss the mark on understanding who our competitors really are. Like, what is your approach to that?
So I think, again, it goes back to monitoring. It's so important. You can't just look at your competitors as being kind of the obvious ones, right? The other match 3 games or the other, PvP games. You really need to look at who is competing with you in the actual app store, who's, leveraging kind of the similar keywords. And that's really what you should be looking at when it comes to ASO, because there may be people that pop up that you are not expecting that are stealing kind of installs from you. From a keyword perspective in the store.
When we talk about the impact that UA has on organics, like who's responsible for that? Like in the organization, like how do you actively monitor that?
So we work really collaboratively with our UA team. So at Jam City, ASO kind of falls under the publishing team, but we have a very close partnership with both our creative team, who are obviously helping us with building the actual creatives that we're testing, but also UA, because again, we want to know if they've done something on the UA side, how that might impact what we're doing, and vice versa. It's such a very, very kind of close connection between all of those different teams. So it's important that everybody be very in sync.
We're going to jump into an interesting topic here. We all know that creatives are still really, really impactful and make a huge impact on people's decision to install or not. And Vanessa's been testing like crazy. So maybe tell us a bit about how you approach testing and in the different stages of games.
So we begin testing very early on and kind of continue testing very rigorously throughout our soft launch period. And then as we go into hard launch, we obviously want to make sure that we are validating any insights that we've gathered in that soft launch phase. And then, it's not like you do it once and then you never do it again. We're continuously testing. We have a fantastic team that's able to really turn out a lot of really great hypotheses that we're then able to kind of roll out very quickly. So in the case of, a game that we have that's launching very soon, we really wanted to understand and make sure that our creatives were really optimized, not only for organic, but also for kind of our highest value users and the paid users that we get. So that's something that StoreMaven is really helpful in allowing us to do, is to test to those different paid groups.
How many people here use Google Experiments? Right. So when do you decide to use a solution like StoreMaven versus Google Experiments? Like what sort of drives that?
So I think Experiments is fantastic for being able to see exactly what's going to happen with your organic traffic, really getting a good sense of kind of A/B testing if this icon or that icon is going to work best. I think what StoreMaven offers is richer and deeper insights. So for us, we can get really, really granular in kind of how users are navigating through the page. Are they scrolling? How much of the video are they actually watching? Where within that video might they be either installing or dropping out? And that really allows you to kind of fine tune and really be a lot more efficient in your creative development. So that's just insight that you don't kind of have elsewhere.
So you have a game that's like you have a lot of games that are now sort of in their maturity phase. What are the challenges with games like that and optimizing them, and how often do you actually test with assets that are sort of more evergreen?
So I think that is a big challenge, obviously, for any company that's had kind of games that have been out for a while. You have an established brand, and so how do you kind of attract new users while still kind of remaining or being able to maintain a consistent kind of look and feel? But you also have, obviously, a lot of people are focused on retargeting efforts, especially if they've had games that have been out for a while. So you need to think about how you're going to optimize not only for a first-time user, but also for bringing back lapsed players into the game, and that's a challenge. And it's something that we're actively trying to solve for.
Yeah, I think from StoreMaven's perspective, what we're seeing a lot more of these days is companies testing with multiple audiences in their tests. So they don't only want to look at their lookalikes that monetize the most, but they might often want to see what lapsed users, how they respond to different assets. Often they're trying to even broaden their reach and try and understand if there's new user segments that might find their game or their concept even appealing. I think this is actually a really incredible test that we see on the screen. Obviously, the second variation is an interesting one. Can you say a few words about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most people that are kind of in the UA space, they see a lot of people testing really interesting UA assets in their store creative now. So this was a test that we ran recently with one of our games, and it's super interesting to see that although that wasn't the top result, there are still elements that obviously are eye-catching and are converting users. So I think for us, what we really look to test is really the first impression. So it's less about just testing this icon versus that icon, but really that kind of holistic picture in the store to make sure you have a cohesive message and theming.
I think we're out of time.
Testing. Okay. We have no time for Q&A, so they're going to more than welcome for you to go and find them right now if you want to ask them any questions. So thank you so much. Give them a round of applause.